on the whole, this lively, bittersweet Columbia release works well and is sure to connect strongly with fans. Kevin Thomas, The LA Times. Priceless, Wesley Morris, The Boston Globe. Got a lot of holiday spirit and a lot of laughs. Richard Roper. An offbeat, sometimes gross, and surprisingly appealing animated film about the true meaning of the holidays. Angel Cone, TV Guide. These reviews from notable and prestigious publications are for Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights. Back then, Sandler had set out to make a holiday classic, and as these reviews show, it was well within his grasp. However, nearly every other publication was not nearly as kind. The most ill-conceived animated comedy since the 1991 dog Grover Dangerfield, said Bruce Fretz of Entertainment Weekly. All this is rendered with pedestrian animation, deadly dialogue, and a general air of indifference, as if the whole thing was the result of a late-night bet or a joke gone horribly wrong. Moira McDonald, The Seattle Times, and Roger Moore of the Orlando Sentinel wrote that it set animation back 30 years, musicals back 40 years, and Judaism back at least 50. It didn't help that this film was only a few years removed from Adam Sandler's critically praised turn in Paul Thomas Anderson's Punch Drunk Love. This led the Washington Post to wonder after 8 Crazy Nights if Punch Drunk Love was all just a dream. The press has always had a rooting interest in Sandler growing up and becoming an artist. The 9/11 drama Reign Over Me has a 64% score on Rotten Tomatoes, and it ranks higher than every Adam Sandler comedy, except one, The Wedding Singer. The press wants Adam Sandler to develop the same way Woody Allen did in Stardust Memories, forsaking his comedies and heading into a new artistic direction. However, Sandler has never gone full crimes and misdemeanors. But as far as tone and substance, 8 Crazy Nights isn't the usual Adam Sandler vehicle. It has more in common with Punch Drunk Love and Funny People than it has in common with Little Nicky or I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry. The film revolves around a Scrooge-like figure, Davy Stone, who is a raging alcoholic and can't connect with anyone because of the childhood trauma of his parents dying in an accident. His character is genuinely unlikable, and his redemption at the end is complicated and not complete. The poop and shit jokes are of course still there in droves, and they happen to be some of Sandler's raunchiest, but they're inside a much different shell. If the press really wanted something different from Sandler, a dark Hanukkah animated musical that is clearly not for children would be it. Whether the film is good or bad is besides the point. Sandler was at the very least trying to do something different. Even before the thrashing of 8 Crazy Nights, Sandler has never had a good relationship with the press. While doing press junkets for Billy Madison, he met a ton of reporters who were nice to him in person and then called him a moron in their profiles, according to Entertainment Weekly. If you're rubbing elbows with the press and giving them access, it's been shown that reviews are a little bit more favorable. But then again, sometimes Adam's movies are just bad. It's hard to defend Jack and Jill or The Ridiculous Six. Critical drubbings have stopped other comedy careers like Pauly Shore, which may have been inevitable. Even someone as famous and successful as Mike Myers simply disappeared after The Love Guru was crucified. But reviews seem to have never bothered or affected Sandler. His movies have been continually made by major studios, and despite some bombs, he's maintained financial success. According to The Hollywood Reporter, as of 2014, his films had generated over $4 billion worldwide. Unfortunately, if you don't happen to be made of review Kevlar like Adam Sandler, one critically reviled movie can change the course of your career. Seth Kearsley, director, Adam Sandler's 8 Crazy Nights.
I grew up in Ventura, and I had a friend that went to CalArts, and I just kind of always drew. I would go out to the parties the Halloween party and the Mardi Gras, and they had some huge parties out there. And so for me, coming out as like a sophomore or junior in high school to these like crazy parties, I was like, I have to go to this school. This is awesome. And then also, I kind of would wander through the animation department during the parties. You know, I was the guy who had too much to drink that was like looking at what people were doing, going, well, it's cool, you draw. You know, I was that guy. One of the guys that I did that to was Pete Docter. He was shooting his student film, and I just heard like the beep beep of the camera, and I kept following that down, and sat and watched his film, 5 seconds at a time, because shooting onto 3/4 inch tape. So yeah, that's how I got started. When I got accepted to CalArts, I had to figure out how I was going to pay for it. I went out and worked with my dad to save money for school, and I was never really into comic books, but I was looking for inspiration and things to keep me drawing, because I knew that like I was going to need to draw a lot when I got there, and I felt like I was going to be really far behind everyone else. So I was picking up a bunch of comics, and it happened to be when Sam Keith was doing the Marvel Comics Presents. Also, like Todd McFarlane was doing Spider-Man then. He was way before Spawn, and so like there's a lot of really cool kind of cartoony stuff happening in comics. And so I was drawing from that stuff. And my last year at school, someone just had taped up photocopies of a call for artists for The Max, which was an MTV show based on Sam Keith's comic book, The Max. And I was just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I could actually work on this? Me and a bunch of guys went down and showed our portfolios and got the job and did fist pumps like secretly in the parking lot as we were walking away, because we were like, yes, we're going to make money doing this. That was the first job, and it like ruined me for everything else that was to come, because it was by far the coolest thing that I've worked on. I lived across the street from the studio. The director, head of the studio, Greg Vanzo, also owned Rough Draft in Korea, and so this is at Rough Draft LA. And so a lot of times he was on Korea time, and I would be going to bed, and out my bedroom window I could see the studio, and I could see that Greg's truck was still in the parking lot. And so I was like, I can't go to sleep, Greg's still working. So I would go over and be like, what do you need help with? I'm here, I want to do it. So I was just kind of diving head first. Always been a hard worker, and it's always helped me the most is the harder you work, the further you get. So after the Max, I ended up at The Simpsons. I did a season on The Simpsons. After The Simpsons, I was kind of bouncing around from place to place. Like I knew where I wanted to end up. Like I knew that I wanted to direct, and whatever the quickest path to me directing was, that's what I was going to do. And it seemed like if you stayed at one studio, especially on The Simpsons, there were so many people ahead of me in line for directing. But if I had stayed there, maybe now I would be getting a shot to direct. But I felt like I needed to hop around. So I went to Disney TV. I worked on Timon and Pumbaa the second season. And I started just getting as much work as I could wherever I could. Did some freelance boards for a show at Sony called Project Geeker that no one has ever heard of. I was at Disney and freelancing boards. And then I was like, I really want to direct. A development project came up at Disney, and I took that and was trying to make something out of it. And thinking that was my path to directing, but just the bureaucracy at Disney and the guy that I was working for, and there was an offer that came up to direct a show called Mummies Alive. It was just called Mummies at the time, and it was at Deke, and I went for the meeting, not thinking that anything was going to happen, because I had never directed before. I had only freelanced boards. I knew how to board, but I'd never been like full-time on staff as a board artist. And I totally bluffed my way through the interview, and the head of development laid out the production model for Mummies, where it was going to be 2 episodes a week going into production each week. So at a point, we would be in production on about 23 episodes at the same time, all in different phases of production. And then at a point, it was going to ramp up to 3 episodes a week because we were doing 42 episodes in a year and a half. And he's like, so do you think you can do that? And I'm like, yeah, totally. Yeah. Like it was nothing. Because I didn't think I had a chance to get the job. So, fake it till you make it, right? But I got the job, and I was like, oh my God, I've never done, how am I going to do this? I have no idea. And I got some great advice from some older colleagues that were working on some of the other shows that I was at Disney. And they said, you know what? It's going to be a trial by fire, but if you completely blow it, so what? You blew it on your first show. Like, they shouldn't have hired someone so green. I was like, yeah, that's true. It's kind of like a no-lose scenario for me. So, yeah, okay, cool, I'll do it. And then I just, really put my nose to the grindstone and worked as hard as I could and survived that trial by fire, and I even thrived in some places. And again, that was the first show, so first show for me as a producer and director, kind of, like living that dream of that art student that was like, I just want to direct. The show didn't win any awards or anything like that, but it did really teach me a lot about how to make something for not a lot of money. Deek budgets, or the DIC doesn't stand for do it cheap, but that's what it was sort of known for, especially at this point. They've been pretty big in the 80s, but by this point, they had bought and sold themselves a bunch of times. That was my Roger Corman experience, really being on the front line in the trenches, the nuts and bolts of how you actually get something made when maybe you don't have a ton of money to make it, and how you, pinch and cheat and steal so that you can make it look like it costs more than it did. So after Mummies, I was invited to come down to Sony again and work on a show that was the Dilbert animated series. It was another situation where they were looking for a supervising director, and I was just being brought on as a director, and they were going to decide who was going to be the supervising director based on how each director did. And so it was another, just, put my nose to the grindstone and just work as hard as I can, and, something will happen. And so I ended up getting the supervising director gig on that. And it's kind of put me on the radar at Sony so that when this, Adam Sandler animated feature came up, I was on the radar. At first, I was going to be, considered for a sequence director gig. And there was someone else who got the director gig. I was like, okay, at least I'm working on it. So I'll work on it, and then we'll see what happens next. And then that guy who was hired was fired the following Monday. He was hired on a Friday, fired on a Monday. Yeah, they just asked him to do some stuff over the weekend, and he didn't. They asked him to, they had been writing the script, and they really wanted to just see, just anything, just do some drawings so that we can see something over the weekend. And he didn't. And then he told them about, some time off that he had planned for a couple of months down the road. And they're like, why didn't you tell us about this? And you did nothing. And you're telling us that you're going to take 2 months off in a couple of months? That's not going to work. And suddenly they were needing a director. And so I got to go up and meet with Sandler and the guys and start that whole part, knowing that you can be hired on a Friday and fired on a Monday. So don't mess it up. It's just the same thing. I kind of take these huge leaps and, reach for the next rung, and then work like hell to hang on, and then try to climb up from there. So that was definitely, at the beginning, it was just work really, really, really hard. I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing a lot of it, and I'm doing it really fast. I'm hanging on. They haven't fired me yet. And, I was always a big fan of Sandler's. I remember all of the theaters that I saw all of the films at. I would have been the guy that was, doing my version of Opera Man, or my version of, Waterboy and all of that. I was super excited to meet Sandler. Actually, really scared out of my mind. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? It's weird, going and meeting someone who's a comedy hero for you. I met him at his house, driving up the hill. So I'm passing all of these gigantic estates because, it's up in Bel Air. And I was like, oh man, if he's got one of these crazy gigantic estates, and what if he's nothing like what he is in the movies? What if he's a total, just rich dickhead guy that, and he was exactly like he was in the movies. I mean, not exactly, but he's playing himself, and just like really cool, down-to-earth guy that makes you feel welcome into his house when you come into his house. And it wasn't a giant estate. It was some 70s style, like, you know, it had a nice view. It was a nice big house, but it wasn't the crazy mansions that I was driving past. And, you know, he's surprisingly humble for how big his career was. Sandler was doing, you know, he does the comedy albums, and so he did this skit called Whitey on the Stan and Judy's Kid album, and it was, you know, the voice for the character Whitey from the movie. You know, it was just him doing a skit with that voice and just being silly and fun. And I guess they played it for Amy Pascal, and she's like, "Oh, that's funny. What are you planning on doing with that?" And they're like, "Oh, we thought maybe we'd do an animated movie with this guy." And she's like, "Great, let's do it." You know, I think our executives were really wanting to have a Hanukkah movie. They're all Jewish, well, not all of them, but you know, a lot of Amy, I'm pretty sure. Doug Belgrad is now running Columbia, or he's running Sony. I don't know. He's one of the top dudes now. They grew up with Christmas movies, and no one ever did a Hanukkah movie. If they could build on the popularity of the Hanukkah song and get a Hanukkah movie out there that was, you know, Sandler's sense of humor, maybe they were brave. Maybe they were not really taking that big of a risk because they were kind of doing this movie for a little bit more than a direct-to-video budget. It's not like they were risking $100 million on an animated Hanukkah movie. That's how easy it happened. It was always going to be a Hanukkah musical. It wasn't always called Eight Crazy Nights, and it didn't always have another version of the Hanukkah song on it. Because of the success of the Hanukkah song, and also because Sandler, that's kind of his thing. Funny songs, you know, we forget about that, but that was his shtick on SNL. He did a lot of that. So the first draft of the script that I read was very close to what we ended up with. I mean, there were a lot of tweaks along the way, but the basic storyline of Whitey and Davy and them both kind of helping each other overcome something, that was in the first draft. And it was just finessing all the rest to get to the end. I felt like it had some, like it was a first draft, you know, so first drafts are the worst version of the movie. Any first draft is the worst version of a movie. So I definitely thought that it needed work, but, you know, we would get there, and we got there. You know, there was a bit of a Scooby-Doo ending at the end. I felt like kind of came out of nowhere. You know, we massaged some of the stuff like that, but a lot of the heart and everything was already there. So I liked it as much as any other first draft. You know, you think that you're going to read a script and you're just going to be like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Let's make that as is. Don't change a word." But that's not really how it works. You have to pull the coal out of the mountain, and you have to like apply lots of pressure to make the diamonds. You don't yank diamonds that are fully formed and polished and edged and sparkling. So it's all work. But, you know, Sandler is, I guess, the thing that I connected to most with Sandler was his work ethic also, because the dude is a monster in the work department. It's like nothing is ever good enough. Everything can always be better. Any joke can always be beaten by a better joke. It was greenlit, and like most things that happen in Hollywood, like it's greenlit, and the director should have been hired, you know, weeks or months ago. So, you know, when you get hired as the director, this isn't just on Eight Crazy Nights, it's on, you know, like almost every project. The director's brought in way too late. And so you're already behind schedule when you start. And it's like, I just got here. How am I late already? Oh, right. I'm seeing your schedule. So we started in 4 rooms that were all connected. It wasn't even like there were halls or anything. It was like 4 rooms that had double doors that opened up to make it one giant room. And that's where the animation side of it started. I remember, like, you know, we're trying to find artists to come work on this thing. We don't have any space for anyone. we were above one of the sound stages, or I think we were above maybe set storage or something like that, because there were always these trucks that were picking things up, that there were diesel trucks that were just sitting there idling. And we didn't have AC in this space, so you just had those old school factory style windows where like the whole glass just kind of rotates. You'd have these diesel trucks underneath those windows just like letting all the fumes come in. That's the beginning of the creative process, I guess.
From that creative spark came a daunting reality. Sony did not have an animation studio. Sony Animation's first film was Open Season, which would be released 4 years after 8 Crazy Nights in 2006. And starting an animation studio around the turn of the century was maybe the last thing on any studio's mind. 2D animation was falling off the face of the earth, and fast. Only a few years before, in 1994, Lion King was the most successful film in the world. By 2000, the industry was in the process of abandoning ship. 20th Century Fox had formed an animation studio in 1994 to compete with Disney and tap into the animation renaissance. And they selected a man who had not only left Disney for greener pastures in the 80s, but had actually defeated Disney at the box office with An American Tail, Mr. Don Bluth. Don Bluth and longtime producer Gary Goldman's next big venture was the Phoenix, Arizona studio, which Fox plunged $100 million into, expecting a new feature every 18 months. In its 6 years, the studio released Anastasia, and Anastasia's sequel, Bartok the Magnificent, which was a direct-to-video, and Titan AE. Titan was a futuristic space adventure, and lost tens of millions of dollars for the studio, according to the LA Times. By then, Fox had simply had enough and closed the studio as quickly as it came. The following is a harrowing description of the closure of the Arizona studio, written by Rick Lyman of the New York Times. A U-Haul truck, back door gaping, was parked on a circular drive facing the roar of lunchtime traffic on Camelback Road. Inside, Gary Goldman and a few helpers were sorting through what was left of Fox Animation Studio. 40 cardboard boxes. Don Bluth, the studio's creative force, had packed up his office the week before and was long gone. A 5-foot-high Lego block statue of Bartok, the bat in Anastasia, the studio's first animated feature, still sat in the lobby beside some posters from Titan AE, its most recent and final animated film. In the nearly empty underground garage, rows of chairs were cluttered in groups. Swivels to the left, tall-backed rockers in the middle, blonde wood reception chairs to the right, like prisoners sorted for transport. Animation isn't dead, not by a long shot, Mr. Goldman said, and neither are we. Animation? Maybe not, but 2D features would be dead soon enough. Warner Brothers was jumping off the bandwagon after the limited success of Iron Giant and Osmosis Jones. Disney would have its own dearth of problems, and eventually close its Florida studio in 2004. And so here was 8 Crazy Nights at Sony. And Sony knew that forming an animation studio at this juncture would be the Hollywood equivalent of Nixon's Madman theory. So Seth Kearsley and his group had to piece together a ragtag team from the splintering 2D animation industry.
But when we first started, we couldn't get anybody. We could get people from TV who weren't working on a new TV thing. But it wasn't until we actually got into animation that then Osmosis Jones was not happening. And all those guys were looking for work. And so we ended up with a lot of Iron Giant guys from that. And Fox shut down. So we ended up with an art director from Fox. It's kind of like all of that happened right when we needed it to in order to have an animation staff. But you know, the original plan for the movie was actually that it was going to be done more like The Simpsons, and we were just going to do character layout in LA, and then it was all going to be sent to Korea for animation. And then maybe we were just going to animate the songs here. There was a whole kerfuffle that happened on the production with that. The original supervising producer, he didn't really have a plan for how to make the thing, like a production plan. He was kind of just winging it. You know, originally the movie was going to be $24 million, and we were going to somehow make it in a year. I don't think that guy was really a big fan of Sandler's. So I think he just sort of saw it as like, yeah, whatever, we're going to do this thing. And, you know, he was a TV producer. So I don't think he was thinking very feature-like with how the thing could look or work or anything like that. And it was actually a struggle all the way through. Everyone kind of trying to figure out how do we make this film, because there's a lot of people that are coming from Disney and DreamWorks and Warner Brothers who all have, you know, their secret sauce already figured out, and like, well, this is how you make an animated feature, but none of that stuff applied to this. Ultimately, they added another year to our schedule because, you know, they wanted to come out, you know, around Hanukkah, and so they added a year. That was a point where I thought we might get shut down, but then they added a year, and they added another $10 million. It gave us a little bit more room to breathe. Then we had a new executive producer that was coming from DreamWorks that had done a direct-to-video film for them, the Joseph and the King of Dreams, I think what it was called. It was sort of their follow-up to Prince of Egypt. So a lot of things just kind of falling into place, I guess, for us on the production side. But a lot of people that were coming from other studios that had, you know, more than twice the time and 3 or 4 times the money to do what we were trying to do. And so we really were kind of doing a whole new kind of production model. You know, the animation ended up happening at studios all over the world. We did half of it in the States. You know, we had a studio in Culver City that had, I don't know, like 50 to 100 artists, you know, depending on what point in the production we were at. And then we had a studio in Phoenix with Fox. Our studio was mostly old Warner Brothers guys, so a lot of the Iron Giant team and Osmosis Jones team. We had a studio in Copenhagen, A-Film, that did a huge chunk of the film, and then, you know, smaller studios all over the world, like, you know, the Disney team in Florida did a chunk. You know, all those guys set up another studio in Florida. I think even still on the Disney Florida lot. I think they were trying to have, just for a blip, that they were going to create a Disney service studio still on the lot for all of those guys who had been part of the Disney Florida team. Yeah, it was a lot of finding different ways to go about it, because it's not a TV schedule and it's not a TV budget, but it's definitely not a feature schedule and feature budget.
To add to the challenges facing the production, the movie was on the verge of being shut down more than once.
It might be that it was never close, and it was just, you know, me as a first-time feature director just freaking out like, they're going to take it away, they're going to take it away, they're going to take it away. This thing that I love doing, they're going to take it away, they're going to take it away, they're going to take it away. But definitely when, you know, the first executive producer, when it all kind of came to a head that he didn't really have a plan, he was kind of winging it, and he'd never done this before. We had Bonnie Arnold, who's now running DreamWorks. At the time, she had produced a couple little movies, maybe you've heard of, Toy Story and Tarzan. So she came in to do an audit of the production. And I was like, oh man, she's going to see. We're done. This is it. Not going to happen anymore. They're shutting us down. And she delivered her report, said that, you know, there's a great team there that's doing a lot of hard work, and, you know, they're making it happen. And that the guy who's supposed to be running the ship clearly has no idea what he's doing. She sat in on the production meetings and said that they were the least productive, most confusing production meetings that she's ever been in, and she was convinced that he had absolutely no idea the state of his production. You know, because in TV, it's a little, you know, the budgets are smaller. It's just like, if it gets done, then it gets done, and then you're done. That's how you make it. With feature, it's you're kind of charting a longer course through rough water. That ship doesn't turn on a dime. So you kind of have to look way down the road and know what you're looking for to find the issues that come up in a production so that you don't get derailed, so you don't miss your release date. The people that were in place really knew what they were doing. Everyone else was doing their jobs. Everyone else knew what was happening in their department. And, you know, maybe everyone didn't have the solutions for how to fix it, because, you know, there was a lot of people that were working in features for the first time. But at least, you know, we all were coming from, a lot of the crew was the crew that was on Dilbert, which was not that dissimilar from a production standpoint, because when we started Dilbert, same thing. We had you basically have to build a studio for every production. We were lucky that all the other 2D units were getting shut down, that we had that talent was available. You know, if 2D had still been going strong, I don't even know. We probably would have had to animate the whole thing in other countries. we didn't just like walk into a whole crew. We had to hire people from all over and build a crew. We had that team in place from Dilbert, and we knew what we were doing. So I think that's how we survived the audit. I mean, we didn't have all the answers, but we were keeping the ship afloat. And when the new executive producer came in, he kind of structured the whole thing a little bit differently, but he had more of the feature numbers of, it's all about quota and where are we hitting our marks and, how much inventories in which department and all of that. It's a more streamlined factory-like way of making it. And we just were being a little bit more guerrilla with it. And that guerrilla filmmaking didn't end when that executive producer came in. We were still, it was like we had a black market on the film of scenes because, there would be stuff where it's like, can you just fix that one thing? Can you just fix this part right here? Like just this one thing, just this one little thing. Nope, that's what it is. Got to go into the next department so we stay on track. But the person who was in that department would be like, yeah, I'll fix it. I'll do it and then I'll send it, but I'll fix it. And all of those things were happening sort of on the sly. It's like scene folders being casually dropped off on people's desks. So you don't know what this is. Just follow the notes inside and pass it on to so-and-so when you're done. We were guerrilla filmmaking, which, I always think that the time at Deke, as my, Roger Corman, how you get it done film school helped a lot in that. The Eight Crazy Nights was also me, jumping for that long and just grabbing onto it and trying to hold on for dear life. And, just like with Mummies, I hadn't ever been a storyboard artist. With Eight Crazy Nights, I had worked with actors at school and stuff, but I'd never worked with actors while they're there in front of the mic, and then I've got to say something that's going to be smart that helps them do their part better, or provide some kind of huge insight. And suddenly I'm, sitting in front of Adam Sandler, and he's looking at me for direction. I'm like, you're Adam Sandler, though. What am I going to say? You're Adam Sandler. And there was a point in, that first record day where we were kind of going along, and he was really super angry, and I just felt like that maybe if we didn't curb that a little bit, how are people going to like this character? You can't spend the first half of the movie being a total asshole and suddenly expect that people are going to like him. And so we did a couple of the lines a little softer, and, kind of gave him more depth to his character other than that he's just angry. Can we lace some of the fear and hurt and longing in there also? All words which, if I were directing the movie again today, I could just say in that record, because now I'm experienced, I could say, it's more than he's just mad. He's sad. What happened to his parents? And, I could do that now. But at the time, I was like, maybe less mad. But, Sandler took the note and ran with it. And it was kind of after that I was like, okay, he's going to listen to me. This is going to work. We can do this. I don't know what I'm doing, but if he trusts me, then maybe we've got a shot. I don't know. And the film was actually, we screened a version that was even way more angry than what the final film is. And those sections didn't test well. And we were able to kind of go in a different direction. And I think that's when it was the first game that Davey refed with Whitey. That used to be the Reform School game. And then it just became a regular game. And then that's when the Long Ago song came about after that screening to show some more of the heart of the film. There was a lot of struggle for me as the director, less with Adam and more with the crew that was coming off of all of these other features where you don't have deer with shit in their teeth and you don't have a guy getting pushed over a hill in a porta potty and coming out covered in poo. There were people who, our first art director, I was super stoked. He had lots of great work, quit on his first day because we showed him where we were at with the story. And he's like, I can't work on this. This is not something I would show my kids. And I'm just not going to work on something that I can't show my kids. So That was tough. There were animators who, there were two animators who did the deer. They did almost all the scenes of the deer, but then there were scenes that they were like, I'm not doing that scene. No, I'm not doing the scene where the deer laughed so hard they pooped themselves. So, we have to find someone else to do those scenes. So that was tough. At some point, almost everyone, rubbed up against something the wrong way. I guess that's the part of the job that becomes, part cheerleader, part quarterback, part coach. Because, as an artist, I get that, you're not going to put that scene on your reel. You don't want to become known for that. But as a professional who's getting a paycheck, this is the scene that's on your desk. So you kind of need to just do that. You need to suck it up and just do it. It can be, that sort of thing can be tough with animators sometimes because, animators are kind of like they're the actor of that scene, but it's also a little bit like they're the director of that scene. It's almost like that scene is a short film for them. Sometimes you take the time to hear all of their grievances, maybe reassign the scene to someone else if you didn't even realize that, okay, sure, you don't do that kind of thing. Got it. All right. Who else can do it? And sometimes we have to be grown-ups and do our jobs. So it's a weird, one foot in both worlds kind of a thing that happens sometimes where yeah, I'm with you. I'm an artist. I get it. I also need this scene done. And this is the work that you were given. So could you please just do it and make it look good? Take the thing that you don't like about the scene and maybe flip it, put some stuff that you do like into the scene so that you hold on to that and you don't think about the thing that you don't like about the scene. And, sometimes the animators' comments brought about a whole new take on characters and would cause a ripple effect with the rest of the animators, and we'd start doing things a completely different way, or someone would really figure out Whitey's walk in a scene and we'd be like, oh yes, everyone needs to come watch the scene, that's how Whitey should move, kind of a thing. But it's all it's not easy, man. Everyone, maybe thinks Sandler is going to be the hardest part of the process because, he's a big star and he's going to get, whatever he wants. But that actually made it a lot easier, because it was, as long as Adam was happy, you kind of got to do whatever you wanted. As long as you gave him what he wanted and he's happy, then, you can play with the other stuff. So there's a lot in the film that I am really proud of. And even the things that I'm like, do we have to have another three-breasted woman joke? Even that stuff, you grow to love it. You do test screenings and people laugh their ass off at the three-breasted woman, then you're like, I guess we're doing another three-breasted woman joke. There were parts in the process where, I was really blown away by stuff that Adam can do. And you get why he is the guy that he is, where he'd read a scene, just him reading all of the parts, and it plays. He did a lot more voices in the movie than he has credits for. His instincts are just just dead on at times. We're just fuck, that dude's a genius. I remember in some of the moments when it's a tender moment with Whitey or Eleanor or something like that, while still doing a silly voice, the amount of emotion that he could put into a line. And then just his energy really pushed the whole thing. It's hard to quantify, but, it's stuff like this, when we finally settled on what was going to be our space for the whole time, we had kind of gotten used to Sandler coming and going, but it was just in my office or with a small group that was sort of okay, Sandler's coming, we're going to do something. And then it's bring him into the place, we're going to do something. And, everyone else is kind of on this huge workload and that. And morale was kind of getting low. And I knew from walking around with him on the lot that he would see people and he would light up and they would light up and be like, oh my God, how's your dad? What happened with that? And then we'd leave and I'm thinking that must be an executive or something. But it was part of the cleanup crew from a movie that he did a few years ago when we were finally got to our space. I said hey, maybe when you come to see me, just take the long way around and say hi to some people. And I said, oh, yeah, of course. It's so quiet sometimes in an animation studio. Maybe he felt it would be disrupting the workflow or something. But then he really got to know the crew. He knew things about the crew that I didn't even know. Stuff going on with their family and all of that, like, it's not reading a line. It's not, in the writing. It's not in the performance. But, I think all of those things are also why Sandler is the guy that he is, because, like, he's really a very centered, down-to-earth, just cool dude that you'd want to hang out with. I feel like that comes across in his stuff, and, it makes sense why he's the guy that he is, even though people are always down on him. Well, it is a lot of, as it was being written, like, oh my God, Nealon should play this guy, and oh, we Lovett should play this guy, and of course Nealon should play that guy, and Lovett should play that guy, and he's got a lot of friends that he can just call and be like, dude, come down to the studio, I need you to record something, and then John Lovett shows up. I knew his films. I knew that that's what he did, and so it's not like I was surprised that we were doing that. There was also a lot of family that had parts. His parents have a part. His nieces and nephews and brother. So it was a lot of friends and family. And did I get to pick people that I was like, I want this person in? No. I guess that's a part of it that I was kind of along for the ride on that part, because I know the kind of movies that he makes, and I know that that's what he does, and would I have cast his assistant in the part of the guy that says that one line? No, but he put his assistant in his movies. He puts his friends in his movies, and they get residuals from that, and it's a little piece that they get to say, like, yeah, I was a part of that. Would the 29-year-old me say, like, yes, we should totally do that? That sounds like a good thing. Probably not. Yeah, but that happens on everything. There's always going to be something like that. I saw a tweet by Brad Bird the other day where someone was asking him, like, so you've done Iron Giant and Ratatouille and Incredibles and Incredibles 2, like, you must be able to just walk into any studio and they just say, here's money, go make a movie. And he's like, I wish it worked that way, but that's not how it works. That's not how the business works. So even for him, that's not how it works. There's always sacrifices. There's always compromises. There's only so many swords you can dive on. And, at a point you have to ask yourself, well, like, why am I doing this? If I'm like, everything that comes up, I'm going to have such a huge reaction and just get so offended. And like, I should just be stoked that I get to do this thing. So that's how the business is. If you want to do your own thing where you get to have 100% creative control, then start a YouTube channel and do that. Or, do it in your garage for years and years, and maybe it'll come out and you'll prove everyone wrong, and it'll be everything that you wanted it to be. But life is about compromise. So is filmmaking. This many years later, I would put my friends in, because why not? Like, it's a long, painful process, and if you can, then you should. Would I put them in everything? No. But I do tend to also cast the same people in things because I like them. And I think that they're funny. And I'd rather work with someone that I like and that I think is funny than, take a chance on, someone else that could end up being a total a-hole. And we had our share of those. I think it's sweet for Sandler to put the nieces and nephews in, even though at the time it may have been frustrating that, I was, giving line readings to non-actors and stuff like that. But in hindsight, it's sweet. It's part of what makes him, that guy. I also went through a divorce during this whole thing, and 9/11 happened right in the middle. And our studio was next door to a mosque that had bomb threats the next day. There was a lot of stuff going on. I thought that the first executive producer was going to fire me. I thought that the second executive producer was going to fire me. It was a tough production in all ways. No one in my family died during that production, so I guess I can knock on wood for that. But it was not easy to get to the finish line. Sometimes I'd be like, I don't even know what we're doing. How's this going to be received? There were writers that were brought in for punch-ups that I'd be like, God, that guy doesn't even care about the film. He's just throwing out a joke. It's a joke. Like, she doesn't care that could alter the course of the film, and suddenly, we've got 5 three-breasted women scenes. I don't think that there are 5, but I held on to different parts. It was hard. I loved every moment of it while I was going through it. There were tough times, but for the most part, I was, living the dream. Like, I say it sarcastically and for real. Like, Sandler was a comedy hero of mine. I got to meet Dustin Hoffman. I got to meet Kathy Bates. I got to do a big studio film at, I was 27 when I started that. 27? No, 29. The Long Ago song is a big thing for me artistically. That was the idea of having the little vignettes open up where it's like a warm summer day in the middle of this cold scene. That's me being a little artsy, saying that, this is Davy's cold heart finding a little bit of warmth and finally starting to warm up. I was really proud of all of the work that the animators did, all of the work that, we ended up at Warner Brothers for our digital back end, and all of the ink and paint and camera and digital backgrounds and CG cars and CG characters. Like, it really lifted the whole thing to, a level that when I started, I didn't think it was going to look like that. It was a lot of incredibly talented people that made this amazing thing, and I got to be like the guy at the helm. They were like, wow, that's awesome. I'm stoked to just look at you do your job. That's cool. There were moments throughout where, different artists would just blow me away and inspire me so much that, it keeps you going. The movie premiere for me, because there was no movie premiere, I think by the time the movie was coming out, they were like, how can we save more money? Let's not have a premiere. And so the premiere for me, I watched it in a small theater, somewhere in the vicinity of Snoqualmie, Washington. And, it was like, the whole theater was maybe the size of my garage, and we were most of the audience. All of the kids were laughing hysterically, and my sister just keeps shooting me eyes like, seriously? What? I wasn't thinking about kids. It was PG-13. I think we sold a lot of tickets for Treasure Planet. Kids who bought a ticket to Treasure Planet and then went to see 8 Crazy Nights. And so I am the hero to everyone who was 12 or 11 or 12 in 2002 when their parents dropped them off with some money to go see Treasure Planet. We finished the film, and then there were 9 months before Hanukkah, before the film was released. And during that time, it's like my full-time job became taking meetings all over town. And then, the movie comes out, and, critics do what critics do. Like, Sandler doesn't do a lot of print, because of some things that happened early on in his career where he did an interview, and the interview was taken out of context and put him in a bad light, and he was just like, all right, I'm not doing any more of that. Critics like to be critics. Their job they're not called praisers. There was an article in the LA Times. The LA Times critic got it. He got the film, and that was like our one good, like, yes, he got it. And, I wasn't working when the movie came out, so unfortunately, I read way too many of the reviews, and it's not good. That was not fun. Yeah. People should maybe dial it back a little bit and realize that these are artists that are making these things. Even not too long ago, there was the nostalgia critic guy. Like, everyone wants to keep putting another nail in the coffin. And it's like, maybe you guys should all just kick the fuck back and, talk about something else. Like, do something positive. And I actually talked to that guy, and I was like, dude, do you know how many artists poured their heart into that movie that you just eviscerated just because you don't like Sandler? You don't like poop jokes and shit like that. But, there's a lot of really talented people you just crapped all over their work. Maybe you should think about that before you do your scathing review. That was not fun. And I was in director prison for quite some time.
After the reviews of 8 Crazy Nights, Seth had to find a way to cope with the sting of critical failure.
I played a lot of Grand Theft Auto. I got really good. I could do the tricks with the motorcycle where you go up the thing, and I could get the sniper rifle and the jetpack and get on the building and like snipe guys, and then watch the mayhem happen down below. I don't know. Am I out of director prison? I mean, there were jobs that were offered that, you know, at different times I've been like, God, I should have taken that. And then other times I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't take that because that did nothing for the guy who did take that. And it would have just been, you know, another mark of like, see, he can't do this thing. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I'm out of director prison yet. I hope so. I went back to work finally on Family Guy, the comeback season 4 of Family Guy. It was a lot of the same production team that had worked with me on Dilbert and had worked with me on 8 Crazy Nights. And so, you know, parts of it felt like coming home, and so it was an easy thing to kind of leave my house finally and go do other stuff. But I don't know that I'm completely out. I hope that I am. I have a project that I'm doing now that I'm really excited about that's mine. And, you know, hopefully something happens with that. But I guess my whole perspective on the industry had to change in order to get myself out of director prison. But, you know, just as an example of the director prison, I went for job interviews at places that I won't say where they are or who these people were. But feature units starting up, and I go and I meet with people who are running the thing, and you know, I kind of popped up onto the feature radar from like another planet as far as feature people were concerned. You know, I have executives say, you know, it's not that we hated the film. Thanks. I hope there's a huge compliment on the back end of that, but it's just all the scatological humor. Like, you're talking about the fart jokes and the poop jokes. You can't just say fart jokes and poop jokes. Like, that's how high class you need to be in this interview. We're talking about cartoons. Like, how many fart jokes are in your movies? There's like one in every movie. And they're like, you know, we would consider you for our director training program. I'm like, oh. Well, it's director training program. Okay, cool. Who's running that director training program? And they told me who, and I'm not going to say who, because they're great people. And I'm like, okay, so what have they directed? Oh, they haven't directed anything. Okay. You know, I just did a feature film, and before that, I did 42 half hours of that show, and 30 half hours of that show. So maybe I should be doing your director training program. I actually said that in the meeting. I did not get that job, but yeah, I mean, you know, people like to look down their nose at 8 Crazy Nights, but you know, we were doing something different, and you know, we did put part into that thing. Is it awesome for me when I go, oh, hey, yeah, so-and-so, he worked on 8 Crazy Nights, and then I look at their resume and they don't list 8 Crazy Nights, or they don't have a single scene from 8 Crazy Nights on their reel, and I'm like, noted. All right, cool. It all stings, it burns. If you don't pour your heart into it, then what are you doing it for? And if you do pour your heart into it, then it's going to hurt when people say shit like that or do shit like that. So, there you go. Do I pay you for the therapy session, or how does it work?
And then there's the looming question of what he would have done differently had he had the chance.
You know, I wouldn't change what that kid did who made that film. But if I were making the same film today, I feel like I would be better at guiding the whole thing in such a way that we wouldn't piss off a lot of moms who thought, like, it's an animated Hanukkah movie. Let's go see the animated Hanukkah movie. And then, you know, Davey's flipping the bird, like, you know, 2 minutes in. And you know, I feel like that we could have accomplished all of the same things in less offensive ways. But, you know, then who's to say if we did that, people wouldn't be like, what? Adam sold out. Like, why is he making this softball kids movie? Like, you can please all the people some of the time, some of the people all the time. I think today I could, you know, maybe guide it in a different way. Maybe the guidance that I would do differently has nothing to do with the script. Maybe the guidance that I would do differently now is all of the things that people praise Eight Crazy Nights for, like, the animation and the look and like the things like that, that people overlook all of the other stuff because of that. Like, maybe that was the mistake. Maybe we should have made it so that when you look at the poster, you can tell that this is a movie for adults and not for kids, and then keep everything else the same. Who's to say? Revisionist history. Hindsight is 2020. I guess, in hindsight on the film, I don't know that I would change anything. Maybe I would change how I allowed the negative press to affect me. Or I would change how I allowed, the treatment of people, that weren't related to the production affect me. Or, the things that people think that they can say to you in a meeting after, how I would let that affect me. But the film is what it is. So I recently did a new TV cut of the film that was interesting to revisit it after all that time. And I don't know, they needed to cut it down so that it could fit for like a 1 hour slot or something like that. I forget, but we had to cut, a significant chunk of things out to fit this new request for length. So I got to cut a lot of things out. So the TV version, not as many three-breasted women jokes. Yeah, I cut a lot of that stuff out, because the story that we were telling didn't rely on those gags. And then it can be played on TV, and, I have 8-year-old daughters that still haven't seen it because mom won't let them see it until after they're 13, because it's a PG-13 movie. So it doesn't matter that, my nieces and nephews went to see it when they were really young, and that I had to hear from my sister that, you know what I found your nephew doing the other day? He had his finger in his butt, and he said, "My finger's in your mouth, kitty, but I don't feel no teeth." And your niece sang that song at school, so thanks for that. I have had, and this is what happens, I've been, it was 94, so 24 years? I don't know, I went to cartoon college, not math college. And I've had a different perspective on everything that I've done. There were moments when I was like, oh, I should have never done that Deke show, and I should have never done Dilbert, and I should have never done Eight Crazy Nights. And but in the end, like, all of those things got me to where I am now. It's all part of life. I would do it again. If Sandler wanted to make Eight Crazy Nights 2, Electric Boogaloo, I'd be down for that. I think that could be awesome. I just have a different perspective on it now. Like, I am more mature in all ways. I don't have any dark hair left on my head. I'm all silver up top. And all of those silver hairs were a whole lot of life between then and now. And, Eight Crazy Nights has done a lot of amazing things for me. I recently did a bunch of work for Illumination, and it was because of Eight Crazy Nights. I had a moment where I was down at Illumination for something, and I'm leaving, and this guy comes running out of the building to chase me down to say hi, because Eight Crazy Nights was his favorite film. When people say that, I'm like, you're just saying that. It's not really there. But like, that was kind of awesome that guy did that. Because, no one has to do that. And I have to believe that he did actually like it.
Let's have a party, we'll all dance the horror. Gather around the table, we'll give you a treat. Send people in to play with the laughter. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. Hanukkah, oh Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party, we'll all dance the horror. Gather around the table, we'll give you a treat. So people need to play with the lots of sweets. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days